Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It is Palestine here. I wanted to make you another video. This video is going to be a carry on from the video that I made yesterday, because yesterday I asked the question, did the deep state cause my cancer? And in that video, I was talking about my former employer, Foster Wheeler. And so this question is going to be, did Foster Wheeler cause my cancer? But before I get into that video, what I would like to say is that I think that the anesthetic has pretty much worn off. I think you're not supposed to do anything for 48 hours after you have general anesthetic. But last night, my wounds were hurting. So I'm just assuming that the anesthetic has worn off. I've been wearing my bra 24/7 because the doctor said he wanted me to make sure I wear a bra. He didn't say how long I was supposed to wear the bra, but I just decided I would wear it 24/7 until my next appointment. And then yesterday and the day before the day of the operation and yesterday, I was really hungry and I just wanted to keep eating, which is not good for me because, some individuals are saying that I got cancer because I wasn't watching my weight. I do watch my weight, but I get hungry and there's not much I can do about it if I'm hungry. So that's just an update on my surgical lumpectomy. People who are watching it who want to know what happened with my lumpectomy. But now what we'll do is we'll get into my former employer, Foster Wheeler. I started working in Foster Wheeler around maybe 2006 as a temporary worker, and I was working in payroll and I was doing invoice audit. And then I got a job in the proposal and estimating department, and I was the affiliate coordinator. And I was the affiliate coordinator for like 7 years until they ran me out of the company. So one thing that I didn't know then that I do know now is that Foster Wheeler was a very corrupt company, and it was a very corrupt company. And this is in the news, so you can look it up. Foster Wheeler was employing third-party agents to bribe companies, bribe oil and gas contractors to get contracts. And that was revealed as part of Operation Car Wash in Latin America. And it was specifically to do with Petrobras, because Petrobras was the government gas company, government oil and gas company. And all these big executives got away with bribing the government officials, because Petrobras was a government oil and gas company. People working for Petrobras were actually government officials. And so, but they had Operation Car Wash. And so under Operation Car Wash, they put these government officials in prison and they kept them there. And they were not accustomed to being put in prison. They were accustomed to being able to bribe their way out of any difficulties they had. And these people were kept in prison until they broke. And then when they broke, they started naming names. And when they started naming names, Foster Wheeler was one of the names that they named. So, like, if you look on Copilot and Gemini and ChatGPT, it will say that Foster Wheeler turned itself in. Foster Wheeler did not turn itself in. Foster Wheeler was turned in by whistleblowers. Whistleblowers turned Foster Wheeler in, but in the media, to try to sanitize everything that Foster Wheeler did, they just say, oh, well, they turned themselves in, they reported themselves, but they didn't report themselves. And so the thing is this, after it was revealed, after these executives in Petrobras named names. They broke under pressure and they named names. It came out that Foster Wheeler was involved in a worldwide corruption scam in Nigeria and South America and several other countries as well. Maybe I do know Nigeria was one country and Brazil was one country, but it was more countries than that. And it's in the on the internet, and you can look it up on the internet. But it was a worldwide corruption scam that Foster Wheeler was involved in, and they had to pay like millions of dollars in fines. They were reported to the SFO, that's the Serious Fraud Office. They were reported to the SEC, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission. So this investigation took place in America and the UK and the countries that they were involved in corrupt practices with. And they had to actually pay Nigerian government money for some of the things that they did. And I actually wrote a blog post and put it on Medium Publications and called it The Fall of Foster Wheeler, A Tale of Engineering and Ambition. So if you're interested in reading what I wrote, then it's on Medium Publications. And the thing is that this saga still goes on because Foster Wheeler couldn't compete with Asian companies. And the reason why Foster Wheeler couldn't compete with Asian companies is because Foster Wheeler's salaries were higher than the salaries of Asian companies. And I do recall sitting in a meeting one time when they were talking about buying contracts, but of course they were buying contracts the whole time. And then so Foster Wheeler was in secret negotiations with AMEC for AMEC to buy Foster Wheeler because it was having problems. And by this time, so AMEC bought Foster Wheeler, so then it became AMEC Foster Wheeler. And by that time, I think it was around 2014 when it had transpired that Foster Wheeler was being investigated by the Serious Fraud Office and the Securities and Exchange Commission and other American organizations as well. But it was too late. AMEC had already bought Foster Wheeler, so it had become AMEC Foster Wheeler. Samir Briko was the CEO of AMEC, and so when AMEC bought Foster Wheeler, Samir Briko became the CEO of AMEC Foster Wheeler. Well, it was a very bad decision for AMEC to purchase Foster Wheeler, and because obviously by this time it became known that Foster Wheeler was being investigated by the authorities. And as a result of that, AMEC Foster Wheeler lost sales, they lost money, and as a result of that, the board of directors of AMEC Foster Wheeler asked Samir Briko to leave. But one thing that I didn't know was that Samir Briko was pally with David Cameron, because David Cameron was the prime minister at the time, and David Cameron had given Samir Briko this special position to be like a business winning ambassador. Which I didn't know that at the time. I did not know that at the time that David Cameron was pally with Samir Briko. And then so I had written a letter to David Cameron telling him about what Foster Wheeler was doing, and I didn't know that David Cameron and Samir Briko were pals. So David Cameron had me sectioned, and so I got sectioned. And then and I was given a diagnosis of a mental illness so they could keep me quiet. And then basically AMEC Foster Wheeler was going down the hill, and a lot of it was to do with Foster Wheeler's corrupt business practices, and a lot of companies didn't want to do business with Foster Wheeler. And then so AMEC, Foster Wheeler, had to write off a lot of contracts that were involved with Foster Wheeler, because when it transpired, when Foster Wheeler's corruption came to public attention, a lot of companies didn't want to do business with them, and they were not happy with them. And then so AMEC, Foster Wheeler, went down the tubes. So Foster Wheeler's corrupt business practices caused AMEC to go down the tubes. And then so Wood, which is a Scottish company up in Aberdeen, decided to buy AMEC Foster Wheeler. So Wood took over AMEC Foster Wheeler. And again, Wood had to take on the responsibility of Foster Wheeler's corrupt business practices, and Wood had to write off a lot of contracts that were not good contracts anymore, because people didn't want to do business with Foster Wheeler anymore. So Wood had to take over the responsibility of that. And so Foster Wheeler's corrupt business practices caused Wood to go down the tubes. So now Wood is down the tubes. At the time of this video, Wood has been taken off the stock exchange. Their accounts have not been submitted. I think they're on the London Stock Exchange. I'm not sure, because they were a Scottish company, but their accounts were riddled with errors, probably trying to cover up the fact that they were losing money. And so they were given a deadline of, I believe, the end of April to submit their accounts. And they didn't, it was the end of March or the end of April, but they were given a deadline to submit their accounts, and they didn't submit their accounts. So they've been taken off the stock exchange. And so now what's happening is this a Middle Eastern company is looking to buy Wood Group for a fraction of what it was worth. And I don't remember the name of it. I don't know if it's Sadara or something like that, but it's definitely a Middle Eastern company is looking to buy Wood Group. Now, I'm not sure if they've bought Wood Group yet, but that's just telling you what a corrupt company Foster Wheeler was, and that's just what's on the public domain. But me being an employee of Foster Wheeler, I didn't know about the company's corruption, but when they decided they didn't want someone in their company, the managers would talk to the employees and tell the employees not to speak to that person. And I personally witnessed that with other people before. They would just tell them not to speak to them. And when they wanted you out, you were out. They made your life hell. And I'd heard this other woman who was an engineer, and her husband or partner, he had been working for Foster Wheeler, and when they decide they want you out, they make your life hell. And I know that personally. And so Foster Wheeler wanted rid of me, because when they were sold to AMEC, they weren't going to need an affiliate coordinator, and they could have just made me, they could have either found me other work to do, or they could have made me redundant, but they didn't want to. They hounded me out of the business, and they used the other employees to hound me out of the business, because they were involved. They had a gang stalking ring, but they don't call it, when it's in a business, it's not called gang stalking, it's called mobbing. So I was mobbed out of the business, and the ultimate goal is to get you out of the business. But even when they got me out of the business, I was still being harassed. And the reason why I was still being harassed is because I believe that Foster Wheeler was going to financially benefit from my demise. And you can come to your own conclusions, but if you do a search on the internet, one of the ways that companies make money on their employees is to take out life insurance policies on them. Of course, I don't know for sure if that's what Foster Wheeler did, but I believe they did it. And in addition to that, they would not have to pay my pension. They could keep the money for my pension as well, because I was an ideal person for them to harm, because I don't have any dependents. I'm single, living on my own. So I was a perfect candidate for this. And basically, I was mobbed out of the company. And I really believed, whenever I realized what was going on, I really believed that if I made a complaint to Human Resources, that Human Resources would resolve the issue. I believed that. I believed that if I told people what they were doing, then it would stop. But it didn't stop. And the reason why is because Human Resources was behind it. And the company was behind it. Yes, they were having the employees do it, but they were directing the employees to do things. One of the things that they did was they set this guy up as a honey trap, and I was dating this guy, and he was from Iran, and I was dating him, and it was all a fake relationship. It was a completely fake relationship, and he did actually let it slip, his intentions towards me, on a few of occasions. Because when we first started dating, he just said, little by little, you'll find out. And then another time, there was this guy that sort of liked me, but only wanted to see me at work. And he told me, and he was married to an Iranian woman, and he told me, he said, if he wanted to, you could make trouble for him. And then another time, he said that we broke up because of the way he treated me, and I wanted to get back together. And he said, yes, we could get back together, because somebody had suggested to him that we get back together. So there were signs there. He did actually let it slip. He let it slip that his intentions to me weren't good. But I always thought it was to do with his mental illness. I didn't know that he was intending to harm me. And I'll be making other videos about this individual as well. I'm just wanted to bring this individual into this video just to let you know that Foster Wheeler used the employees to harm me, but it was Foster Wheeler that was behind it. And the reason why I know that Foster Wheeler was behind it is because whenever I made a grievance, the letters that I received when I made the grievance were just absolutely horrible. They were horrible. They made me cry. They were so bad. They were horrible. And those letters have been removed from my apartment, and they have been replaced with more moderately worded letters. So basically, when I was out working or when I was out looking for a job, they were coming into my apartment. They were going through everything I had with a fine-tooth comb. They were taking the letters that they had written me, and they were replacing those letters with more moderately worded letters. But of course, I can't prove any of that, and that's why I've been given a diagnosis of a mental illness. So Foster Wheeler mobbing me out of the business was very traumatic for me, because I was planning to retire at Foster Wheeler. I wanted Foster Wheeler to be the last company that I ever worked for. So that is why I believe that Foster Wheeler caused my cancer. But I'm running out of time now. I've told you about Foster Wheeler's corrupt business practices that are on the public domain, and you can do a search on the internet and find out all about that. And I also wanted to say that Foster Wheeler was originally an American company, and in addition to Foster Wheeler originally being an American company, it had contracts with the American military, such as, I believe, the American Navy. So Foster Wheeler was in it with the American government. And in my last video, I was talking about the deep state. So Foster Wheeler was in it with the deep state. So I don't know that Foster Wheeler wasn't involved in these psychological exercises for the American government. So it had originally been an American company, and then they made it a Bermuda company for tax purposes, and then they made it a Swiss company, but that was all for tax purposes, but it was generally an American company. Even though people say it's a Swiss company, it wasn't a Swiss company. It was a Swiss company only on paper, because all of the executives were at Shinfield Park, Reading, UK, when it was a Swiss company. So I digressed a little bit because I wanted to give you this correlation between Foster Wheeler being part of the American deep state, and we don't know that Foster Wheeler wasn't involved in psychological operations for the deep state. We don't know that. We're never going to know the full extent of Foster Wheeler's involvement with the American deep state and the British deep state until these files became are released to the public. But I do think that because Foster Wheeler was an American company, it had contracts with the American government. I don't know that they're not part of the deep state. I don't know that they weren't involved in MK Ultra type work to see how they could damage people and see what they could do to people. I don't know that, but I know how I was treated, and I was treated very badly, and I do believe that they caused me to get cancer, and the stress of it all, they caused my eyes to go because I wasn't wearing glasses before all this started, and they caused me to get diabetes, and then they caused me to get cancer. And yeah, my sister says that I got diabetes because I didn't watch my weight. Well, yeah, when your people are trying to harm you and trying to make money off of your demise, yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult to watch your weight. Okay, so I've talked over 20 minutes, I believe, so I guess I'll stop this video. I've covered all the main points about Foster Wheeler's public domain, corrupt business practices, and their corruption within the company. So if you like my video, please like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching my video. I'll be making other videos for you soon.